fantastic, so that we can share it via Gmail so that you can access it. So with that, Casey, thank you. Can you kick us off?
Sure. Okay, welcome everyone. Is everyone ready for it this morning? Just so you can everyone hear myself and Mark?
I can hear you, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Casey. I'm the branch manager for the Cape Town office. And before I joined MSPD Africa, I used to work for a high-end real estate company.
What?
Supporting multiple sales teams who did all of the upper areas of the Western Cape. And during my time when I was there, what I noticed was that for every 100 or so viewings on properties that these sales teams did, they maybe closed one deal. And sometimes they didn't even get to close that one deal because another agency would come in and get the sale instead. So they basically had like a maybe almost 1% close rate. Then I joined MSPD Africa and I started assisting Mark with his deals. And what I noticed was that for every quote that I assisted Mark with, the clients placed an order. And this was during a time when there was no load shedding. So I was wondering, how on earth did Mark manage to close every order that he did with a client? The odd clients, there was maybe 1% of the clients that didn't take it straight away. Mark put on a if not, but when list. Because when their circumstances changed, like the divorce went through or the house they were buying was finally in their name, they would come back to Mark and they would place the order then. During this time period, Mark was running 7 teams, one dedicated solely to support. He grew the company exponentially. So I'm very excited today to introduce you guys to Mark, the founder of MSPD Africa and the brains behind a 99% close rate.
Well, thank you very much, Casey. You are very, very kind. And thank you to all for joining today. And you guys are all solar and sales professionals, so I'm sure that a lot of what I'm telling you is not new. If there are 1 or 2 things that you guys can take away to help you, I'd be very, very grateful for that. So there's a couple of scenarios that are happening now that I've got the benefit of some distance to look back at. And there's a whole bunch of different concepts that are used in conjunction with each other that I think led to our high close rate. And the one thing really, and why this is called SuperSize, is that I always thought that if we increased our turnover by 10%, we'd increase our company's profitability by 10%. But all things being equal, in other words, inter alia, all other costs in our company were constant. If the customer added something to their order and we increased our turnover by 10%, we increased our company's profitability by 30%. And so that was good for our company. But more importantly, it was good for the customers because they got a system that met their needs more, and that meant they were happier. And in turn, they referred more clients to us. So strong referrals, obviously, we all know the secret to a good close rate. So what we would typically do is we would run a filter. So this is just some of our installations that we did at the time. And Ross here was our very first client, and he got a whopping 2.8 kilowatts of solar, back in the day, just for some reflection of how things have changed. So I'll come back to these slides in a moment. But the main first part was that we would run a filter. The filter is just basically the easiest way that I could determine if the client was actually a proper prospect. So The logic being that everybody can afford solar power. I mean, everybody wants solar power, but the people that can afford it are sometimes few and far between. So on receiving a query, I would ask the clients some basic information. And the point of asking him if he had a single phase or three-phase breaker gave us some interaction. The client would have to go up and down, and he'd have to work a little bit. So we would start our relationship like that. So people value things, so these days at school, we get a certificate of attendance. But if we actually win the race, when we've worked for a little bit, that certificate is much more valuable. So all of these type of principles lead into the way that we interact with our clients. So I'd often just ask them if they didn't know if they had a single phase or a three-phase breaker, just to ask them if they could take a photograph of it. And so the interaction happened. So the first thing, obviously, now is once I've qualified the client, the next step is obviously to jump into my car and go see the client. And now I've already had a look at it on Google Earth, and I've got a pretty good view. And as soon as I get to the site, I would ask the client if he would mind if I could take a drone shot. The purpose of the drone shot would come back, I'll refer to in a little while we're chatting. But while obviously the same way you guys would be doing, you'd be having a look at the size of the house, you'd be having a look at the roofs, you'd be having a look at if they've got a pool, a borehole, and just getting the lay of the land, so to speak. So the next most important thing for me was then to have a seat with the client. And this is fundamentally very important as to where you sit. So if the guy wanted to just talk in the driveway, I'd say what we have to talk about is really important. If you haven't got, a bit of time for us to discuss this properly, I'll come back. And if you wanted to sit in the lounge, I'd go, we need to sit around, some electronics. It's really important that we sit at a table, preferably the dining room table, where he could be at the head of the table and I could sit to the side. And the reason the dining room table is key, and a lot of these things all interlock along the way, is this: all important decisions, or most important decisions in a family, are made around the dining room table. And if the client's wife was there, then it was really important for me to try and get her included in the conversation. The wife obviously being the most influential. In my household, I really want to do everything, and it's not great for me to admit publicly, but I always need to get the Charles Atlas stamp of approval or the nod from my wife to say yes, we can, on any large purchase that we can go ahead. So I have done it once or twice without asking her, and then luckily I've lived to survive the fallout. So now that we're at the dining room table, and I've got some pre-information from the client, we're just going to ask him, obviously the most important thing at the moment is, how much are you spending on electricity a month? And what I'm trying to work out here is to get some feel of his consumption. And so I have Cherie, who's my stand-in customer. She joined our company just recently. And she's our test case, or going to act or play act as our customer. So we have done this a couple of times with her before. So it might seem a bit pre-loaded now than the natural time when we did it 3 weeks ago for the first time. But in essence, I'm trying to get the spend. So then if I ask you, Cherie, about how much are you spending a month on electricity?
About 2,500 Rand.
About 2.5. So what I'm doing now is I'm playing with the kilowatt hours, and I'm trying to get this down to around 2.5. So what we can see then, obviously, is I'm trying to get an average rate. The average rate here is because she's got a more heavy reliance on the early kilowatt hours, the cheaper kilowatt hours. And in essence, this is giving me a rate that I can use in my calculator or in a cost of return model, should it come to that. But in most cases, this, for the client, it's just a briefer overview. I was never that specific, getting myself into promising so many kilowatt hours per year and so on and so forth. So now that we have your average kilowatt hours and we've got an average rate, I'm going to jump over here. And I don't know, Casey, if it's pulling that formula across, or if you're on the line, or if you run away. But
no, I'm still here. Yes, it's pulling it across.
pulling it across. Cool. So in essence, what we're seeing with the client then, and now I'm talking to the client, is that we can see on average at the moment, we have a 23 kilowatt hour a day problem. And typically during winter, our electricity consumption goes up by at least a third to a half. So we have a higher electricity consumption in winter. So I'm not sure if you've noticed this on your electricity bills or...
Well, yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Okay. So during our pre-consultation, we've now, I just want to confirm, in essence, I'd be asking the client and just double checking. We mentioned that you had a single phase supplier. So
Yes.
yes. So the main thing here now is to ask what is it that you would like to achieve from your solar power?
Well, I would like to be independent of Eskom.
Okay. And so, and what does that mean to you in essence? I'm not sure.
So I would like to generate my own power. I hear that's possible. And I would also not like to be interrupted if there's maintenance work or whatever, load shredding or whatever they call it lately.
So by independent, are you looking to save your entire bill? Are you looking to save 50% of your bill, 80% of your bill?
Essentially my whole bill.
Your whole bill.
Yeah.
So what this is obviously is just a basic needs analysis. And what we're doing in essence by changing our terms to saying we have a 23 kilowatt hour a day on average problem, and we have a winter bill of 32. We're now moving ourselves to the customer side of the table. So I normally do this average thing on a piece of paper, but for this call, I would obviously I can't pull up a piece of paper to do it. And the piece of paper would be our working sheet that I would be jotting down these notes on to the side. So what I'd also look for is, so Cherie says that you'd be like to be 100% independent. And I'd say then that the first 80% is the lowest hanging fruit. And so that's in essence, hypothetically going to say it cost us 200,000 Rand to do the first 80%. The next 10% is going to cost us another 200,000 Rand. The next 5, another 200,000 Rand. And the last 5%, maybe around R1 million for you to be completely off grid.
Okay.
So with that in mind, would you still like to be 100% off grid, or is around 80% cool for you?
80% is fine.
Okay. This is really just to set the reality of solar in case. And now you mentioned that you would like not to have any power interruptions. Okay. So the word I'd like to use here with the client is the word security. So I'd refer back to the client so that you are looking for power security in your home, for your home, your business, and or your family.
Yep.
So the word power security is very important because we are 3 to 4 times more likely to make a purchasing decision for something that keeps us secure rather than gives us utility. So an example of that would be we're 3 or 4 times more likely to have a fence that doesn't provide us potentially any use out of it, unless you've got dogs to keep it in, but that doesn't actually do anything for you, but provides you security. We'd rather have, if you look at the number of people that have alarms versus solar power, the amount of us that take vitamins versus not. So the security industry is the largest industry in the world. And South Africa spend on average 3 to 9 times more for security than the Colombians do. So we are a very, very security expense-driven company. So the word security is a pull here, and I'll keep referring to that during the chat. So you'd like power security, and is there anything else that you'd like from your solar power?
The swimming pool is a big thing for me.
So
I want to run it.
I noticed your pool is looking a bit
like a dam.
A dam, yeah.
Yeah, and then
so how much would you like to run your pool?
8 hours a day.
Okay, 8 hours a day of pool. Okay.
And then, yeah, just teaching my young child about.
And some education, family education. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, and this is really important in any conversation, in any sales tool, is to reflect back to the client what you heard. So by reflecting back, I'm going to say, well, thank you very much. It's great to be here at your home. We can see that you've got a 23 kilowatt hour a day problem on average during the winter months and a 32 kilowatt hour a day problem in winter. You'd like to be around 80% independent from the grid. You're looking for power security and you'd like to start running your pool. And I see your son running around the house or whatever. So obviously you wanted to teach your family around that. So in my mind, have I got this clear?
Yes.
So the main thing here, and sorry, feels a bit awkward doing it like this, but the main thing here is in life, we want to be heard. So we want to reflect back to the client and we're wanting to keep the light shining on the client. Everything at this point is about what the client's needs and wants are. You'll notice there has been no talk of any hardware, panels, brands, or anything like that. The main point here is just for me to be engaging with Cherie all the time and her and her husband and what her needs are and her specific environment. So what we're going to jump to now is, so in essence, the consultative approach that we're using here is combined with two things. It's the consultative selling, and then there's the education part. So when you buy life insurance or anything like that, the client consults with you and gives the broker consults with you and says, well, if you want to retire at 65, you need to save so much for your pension, but he doesn't tell you how you need to invest your money. So in essence, we're going to go through on the education side now. So the education side is really important. We're continually now building trust with our client. So what we're going to show you here is that if we install an average of 2 solar panels, and I now have the laptop up for Cherie to see, but she's sitting opposite my desk. If we install 2 solar panels, that's roughly a kilowatt of solar. We're going to produce on average around 4.4 kilowatt hours a day. And to bring that in perspective, you're using an average of 23 kilowatt hours in a day. So just to put that in a graphical term, let me just zoom out here a bit. If you're having a look at a solar forecast for the year, this is 10 kilowatts of solar installed on a north-facing roof. And what you'll notice here is in January, we produce 3 times more power than we do in winter. So these months, typically here from January to March, I call the solar salesman months. And these months here, when solar is not working fantastically, mostly we don't want to talk about that. But in this interaction, we're going to have a look at how many panels you're going to need to produce your power in winter, because we're trying to get an average of 80% in the year. So I don't know if you'd be happy to get whopping electricity bills in winter and no electricity bills in summer.
Not really, but yeah, let's see.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play with the number of panels and we're going to increase it from 2 to say 10, hypothetically speaking. And you'll see 10 solar panels on average would produce around 2,800 rand of electricity per month. So all things being equal, that would make us very happy. But if we have a look down here in winter, 10 solar panels are only going to produce around 1,400 rand a month in power. And so what we're trying to do is we actually want to produce more than 2.5, because if I go back to our average calculator and I increase this to 900 odd, so we're needing to produce 900 kilowatt hours for our household need so we need a lot more panels. So if I come back to our calculator here, we're going to want to increase the panel number until we get to around 2.5 to 3,500 rand. So the panels are the cheapest part. They are at the moment cheaper than buying a glass window, cheaper than buying a shower door. They have, they are, when I first bought my first array, it was 6,000 rand a watt for solar panels. It's now around 4 or 5 rand a watt. So panels are, relatively speaking, are as cheap as toilet paper. So we want to try and buy as many of them as possible. So if we increase our solar panels to around 20 solar panels, we're going to produce around 2,800 Rand a month worth of power in winter out of your 3.5 spend. It's around your 80% mark. Would that be cool for you?
Yep, that's great.
Okay. So let's have a look now at your battery bank size. So what we're going to be asking now is typically what we're doing here is you can see we're upsizing. We're doing what McDonald's does when we go in and get some chips. They're saying, would you like to supersize that burger, or would you like fries or large fries or whatever to go with that? So in this case, what we're doing is typically in the solar industry, and this is the trap I fall in, I'd look at the guy's house, let's say it's a single bedroom house or a 2-bedroom house or whatever the case is, 8 solar panels, an 8 kilowatt and a 5 kilowatt hour battery or whatever the number is. But by going through the needs analysis with the client is now aware and more educated on what solar can do. And he's now aware that he needs a truckload more solar panels. So we're increasing our turnover from 10 to 12 or 10 to 14 or so on and so forth. And by doing that, as I mentioned earlier, we've got happier clients because they're happy in winter. They're not phoning me and saying, why is my solar panel power not working? They're giving us referrals, and our business is stronger. We're making a little bit more money, so we can be there to service our clients, and it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The second part here is now typically what happens in a home like this that spends this type of money. We go an 8 and 10 or an 8 and 5 kilowatt hour battery or whatever the number is to now go through the same process on the battery to, in essence, give the client the battery they need. And at the same time, we also are selling more. So all costs are equal. Any increase in sales are fantastic for us. And so if we have a 30% increase in order, it's a 50 to 60% increase in our company's profitability. So just for a bit of a backstory here. So if we go, in essence, you've got an average bill of around 2,500 a month. About what percentage of your power do you think you use overnight?
I don't know, 10%.
So Casey's, and when I do this with her and Cherie, both give me a hard time because they know what answer I want at the moment, but they still give me a hard time. So typically clients always give me this 10% response because the reaction from people is there's only power being used when my hand turns it on. So then I would ask the client, well, sort of explain that in a nice way and say, but your fridges are still running and your DSTV is still running and your alarm is still running and your geyser is potentially still running and everything else is still running in your home while you're sleeping. So would you think the number would be, still 10%?
Probably not.
Yeah. So typically on average, if we've got a home that's practicing load shifting, in other words, moving their daytime consumption like their geyser into the night, then we have around a 30 to 35% power consumption overnight. So what I'm doing here in the formulas, and if I'm wanting to be a bit nice, I'm going to go, okay, well, we've got a 35% power use overnight. Let me just change the formula, and normally I just go like this and change it on the fly. So you can see that we need around 8 units of prepaid power, 8 kilowatt hours to keep your home going overnight on average. So you mentioned that you'd want power security. So the question here is, how much of your battery would you like to keep in reserve? You can't use it every day to power your house overnight. It's just going to be there. Like if you're flying a plane, you've got reserve fuel. You only tap into it in an emergency, like a load shedding or a power outage or whatever we want to call it, as you mentioned it. So about what percentage of your battery would you like to keep?
I don't know percentage, but I want to keep it running for about 8 hours if it goes off at night.
8 hours.
Just to make sure it keeps going until the next day.
Okay, so from that we can see that you need around 8 kilowatt hours overnight to power your house. So if you want to have power security for the whole evening, we do need another 8 kilowatt hours of battery storage to get you through. So then we're just going to manually override this sheet, what I do on the fly, to 16 kilowatt hours of battery. So 8 you're going to use for money saving, and the other 8 you're going to use for power security. So what batteries are is they are 90% usable.
Yeah.
So the last 10% you can't use. So what you would have then is we need to add another 10% to that battery. So in essence, from what you can see here is we need 20 kilowatt hours of storage to do both your nighttime solar power for money saving and your backup power for reserve. So in essence, we're going to change that back to 20. So in essence, our needs analysis now for the client's needs are now done. We figured they need a 20 panel system and 20 kilowatt hours of battery to meet their requirements to reduce their bill by 80%. So this is what I'll be chatting about, and to provide you power security in the event of something happening. So if you have this sort of battery and you manage your battery overnight, what I've experienced in my life is that if the power goes off now, today, I will be able to run my home on a setup like this until June the 15th next year.
Oh.
So the reason that is happening is this is solar heaven time. This is solar abundant time. And every year when I come to the beginning of June, I think this weather is fantastic. Winter's not going to touch me. And then every year around the 15th, big gray things roll off the sea and they humble my arrogant solar life into realization. So during winter, in essence, what we're now going to get is you running your house, we're going to have one night of security. Then from the 15th of September onwards, when the sun comes back and returns from Sweden, we're going to now have the same cycle. So basically from the 15th of September through to the 15th of June, if you have an outage, if you manage your home, you're going to be able to keep your family and you guys safe and empowered, you know, all things being equal. So what I'd really do at this point is to show an example. So the example that I like to show is myself or my business. So if I'm working with a business client, I'm now going to jump and show off our system downstairs. But if I'm now speaking with a residential client, I'm going to show my home system. So the point here is what we are moving on to now is we're selling the dream. We're selling the dream. We're creating a picture in Cherie's mind that this system is going to be doing X, Y, and Z for her. So probably this time when I've spoken to her, I've said new things than I've said before. So how's that making you feel?
Excited.
And from doing this with me for the past couple of weeks, what have you actually gone and done?
Well, I'm actually getting solar installed.
Which is kind of weird because Cherie thought she needed a 5 and 5 and she's getting a 20 and 20, you know. So
Yeah.
Anyway, so the idea here is you can see at my home, I have a lot of inverters. In essence, I'm a solar power fanatic. So I'm going to have a look at my home on my main inverter here. And you can see this is currently what's happening in my home. We're generating 15 kilowatts of power, and I've got a single bedroom house that needs a truckload of power. The most power I've ever seen in my life for my single bedroom house now is needing 17 kilowatts of power to run it. And I'm really, really chuffed that we're running this 100% off my own system.
Woohoo.
Yeah. So in essence, what we're using is surplus battery from yesterday. You can see there's 4 kilowatts coming out of my battery bank. So I've got a massive battery bank of 85 kilowatt hours. So I've basically have a house behind the mountain. So my house only gets into sun later. So my peak solar time is still coming. You can see that here in the morning. I've got no solar here until 8:45 in the morning. Big trees, big mountain. My house is all thatch, and I've got the worst roofs. They're south facing, east and west. They only have solar in the morning and the afternoon and so on. But really what I just wanted to show you is what a summer grid can potentially look like. And if I can find grid on here, sorry, grid power. Casey, can you see it? I'm losing myself while I'm under pressure.
Sorry, Mark, I'm trying to see. We're looking for grid
power
power.
consumption. There we go. Okay. So in essence here, you can see my grid consumption overnight. So that is basically 17 watts of power is the peak. So 3 LEDs of grid power. And so this is a technical draw from the grid. So let me show you what that looks like over a 24-hour period. And if I go to Monday, you can see that I've drawn virtually no power from the grid. So as I mentioned, we can do this now at our house until June the 15th. June the 15th, I tuck my tail between my legs, and I just have to deal with it every year till the 15th of September. So in essence, what we're doing here with the client is we're showing proof that it's possible, proof that we use our own, we eat our own beans, and more importantly now, in your mind, how are you visualizing your home?
Oh, I also want to be like that.
Okay, so in essence, we're selling the dream. So the next part of this is that we're going to chat about another couple of things. And it's a bit of personal question, so you don't have to answer if you don't want. But in essence, I see you've got around a 200-liter geyser from our previous conversation. And I noticed you've got you seem to like your showers.
Yeah.
So you have a large shower head. Casey has the same problem, one of these big shower heads. So what we just wanted to talk about is that about how long do you typically shower?
It depends who asks me, but 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. So and your son and things like that?
Yeah, so he baths.
He baths, so even worse.
Yeah.
Okay, so in essence, what we have here is if you're running your shower for 15 minutes and 3 people a day are bathing the shower, so it's you, your mom, and your son, a large shower head like this draws 20 liters a minute. So the first thing you're going to go, well, is how can you run a 15-minute shower out of that draws 20 liters out of a 200-liter geyser? The mass doesn't add up. But all of it is not hot water. So you haven't got the tap fully at the 9 o'clock position. We'll have it somewhere at 6 or 4 or 8, depending. So you're running it on a mix. But in essence, to heat the water in your home is costing you around 1,400 Rand a month out of your 2,500 bill.
Sure.
So in my early days of trying to use less energy, where solar panels were really expensive, I installed flow restrictors into my shower head. So flow restrictors are these evil little plastic things that you put in line, and they reduce the amount of water flow. I'm going to just type shower. So there are these little plastic things here that you can put into your shower, and you can choose the size that you want. So I chose the size that reduced my shower flow rate down to 4 liters a minute. So you can see on the spreadsheet here that I brought my annual water heating costs by doing that from 17,000 Rand a year to 3,000 odd Rand a year. But while I did that, my wife and daughter, who are my customers in my house, they didn't like it. They went absolutely ballistic. So I did some research, and I found this shower head from a company called Oxygenics. And what this does is it mixes air with the water, and you get the huge amount of pressure by using much less water. So it brings your flow down to about 9 liters a minute. So yeah, sorry, that's not my wife, even though I've had the shower head for a long time. I can only dream. But so by using the Oxygenic shower head, by changing the shower heads in your home, and we change it to Oxygenics to that, we're going to reduce the flow down to 9 liters a minute without you suffering to wash your hair, and for everyone else in your family still to be happy. But what that's really going to do for us, and what's more important here, is it's going to bring your heating costs of your water down dramatically for the year. And this is in summer and winter. So it has a larger impact, and on average, it's going to bring our kilowatt hour consumption down by 6 a day.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you want to run your pool. So that typically, if you have a 1 kilowatt motor running for 8 hours, you need 8 kilowatt hours just to run your pool. So the perception is normally out there that cooking uses energy. A stove is on for like half an hour to an hour. A 2 kilowatt stove running for half an hour or 40 minutes is going to use 1 kilowatt hour, but your pool pump is going to use 8 kilowatt hours. So it's the single largest power user typically in our homes. So the next thing that I wanted to ask is, I see that you have a traditional pool pump.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I notice it's a 1 kilowatt pool pump. You mentioned you'd like to run for 8 hours, but let's just change it to 10 because you want to now have an extra clean pool from our conversation. So if I change that to 10 and I change this guy to 11, if you go and change your pool pump from a normal pool pump to a permanent magnet pool pump. So the difference between a normal motor is that the coil needs to be energized. So that big wind of copper that goes around a piece of metal, that has to be energized in order for the electricity to make the thing spin. If you change it to a permanent magnet motor, the coil doesn't need to be energized because it's already a magnet. And that uses 70% less power.
Wow.
So in essence, if we change your shower head and you change your pool pump, we're going to save, basically give you another 7 kilowatt hours a day to run your pool pump rather than using a traditional method. So there's a couple of links and references here in our presentation, which we'll share with you guys later on the shower head and the pool pump. There's nice videos from Australia where this runs out all the time, where it talks about the energy saving that I would share with the client after the fact. So it is basically just going to run to the fact that these pumps, in essence, save 70 to 80% of the energy. So the main thing here, in essence, by doing this is when I mentioned, in essence, we're on your side of the table. It's our problem to try and solve this. So when I did this with you the first time, how did it make you feel?
It didn't make me feel like you just want to sell me solar. It made me feel like you understand my problem and that you actually have the same problem that you also started solving, because I saw what you were doing. And then it felt in reach that I could also do it.
Well, thank you. So this week one is so different than last week because Sharia's sitting opposite me rather than to the side like last time. And I'm asking these type of questions, and this might seem pre-rehearsed, but these are completely natural as they're coming across. So, you know, just so that you guys can get a feeling for that. So in essence, what we're going to come back to now is we're going to come back to our problem. So because you aren't running your pool pump at the moment, we're going to have data savings. So we still need our 20 panels and around a 20 kilowatt hour battery. So we're going to jump to having a look at the type of your roof and basically how we could place these panels. So what I'd now be using is I'd be pulling out my drone shot, and we'd be bringing that out on with an iPad and a pen, and I'd be pulling up the city map viewer. So for you guys who are in Johannesburg, I'm sure there's a Johannesburg map viewer, and I even see in Langebaan and Saldanha they have it as well. And the map viewer is a really cool tool. So what we're moving to now is something called the Forever Now concept. So the Forever Now concept, while this just loads and I'm waiting for it to come, is the Forever Now concept is the difference between our conscious and our unconscious mind. So our conscious mind is we're sitting here and we're aware of everything, but we can't tell the difference between falling in a dream and actually falling in real life. So when you're falling in your dream and you wake up with that big shock, for a second or two, you believe you've fallen. And so now we're moving the Forever Now concept. We're creating the mock-up stage of what we're doing, creates the perception in your mind that it's already happened. So now we're starting to enter the Forever Now concept phase. So it was 45 Algoa.
Yeah.
45 Algoa, if I've spelled that correctly. Okay, so what we're now doing is we're coming to the visual part of it. We're going to say thank you to the City of Cape Town for these nice images. And in essence, this is your house here that's labeled 45.
Yes.
So what we can see here is that you have a solar heaven roof. So traditional thinking is that all solar panels need to face north. So we're on a use it or lose it base in Cape Town and most places around South Africa. It's very difficult to feed excess power into the grid. So what an east roof does is it will allow us to get off battery 2 hours earlier in the morning and 2 hours later in the afternoon with the west. So previously, I showed you a north-facing example that if we have 10 kilowatts of solar facing north, you can see that it's going to produce around 18,400 kilowatt hours for the year. If we have an east-facing array, it's going to produce 17,700 kilowatt hours. So virtually the same in our language. And the same with the west, you'll see 17,800. I can't figure out why the west is slightly better. And even if we have our roof with a south-facing orientation, at my home I ran this because my largest array is south-facing, and it has on average a 6% lower output than a north-facing array. So what I did then is that hammers me hard in winter. So panels are cheap, I just oversized my panels to help get me through. So if we have a look at your house, you have a solar heaven roof. So just try and find the toolbar here. And if I go to the measuring tool, we're going to have a look at your roof cord. And you can see this incredible roof. I haven't seen a roof like this all week. So it's 17 meters long this way, and you can, in essence, it looks like a beautiful roof cord, and 4 or 5 meters long this way. So in essence, what we can do here is there's space on, and now this would be easier on my iPad and easier on the drone shot to help my concept, is that in essence, what we're going to start doing is actually physically placing the panels on the roof. And the real thing for me here is when I went through this with the client and I laid it all out, and we put our 10 panels here and 10 on the other side, excuse the bad drawing here, but you guys get the gist of it. Everyone else makes more professional mock-ups. Then in essence, we've already started the project. We are now in Cherie's mind busy doing it. It's already happened in her subconscious mind. So basically you have a solar heaven roof. You can have 10 panels on the east, 10 panels on the west, and you can be off your battery 2 hours earlier in the morning. And when you're cooking at night in winter at sort of 7 o'clock in the evening, you can go, I'm cooking on solar still in summer, rather than saying I'm drawing power from my battery. So an absolute solar heaven case.
Got a problem.
And there's always a problem.
I don't want my panels facing the road.
So when Cherie first said this to me, when we did this the first time, I got a bit cranky and a bit upset, because everywhere I go, everybody wants me to help them have solar. And then everyone goes, well, I don't want to see them. And then I get a bit frustrated, but I have to put my frustrations in my back pocket and ask you, well, why don't you want your panels facing the road? Even though inside I'm like, it's the perfect roof,
Because it's a security risk.
Okay. So let's have a look and see how we can solve that. So what I can see here on your house is you've got this nice carport, which is really fantastic. So let's just have a measure of that. So there's an alternate roof space is the way we want to go. Don't always have this luxury. So it's 8-9 meters long, and it's on the north side of the building. So there's nothing to shade it. I see a little tree here, which is going to give us a bit of a hard time, but nothing too serious. So just try and get that distance there, and a whopping 5.5 meters here. So in essence, we could easily fit 10 panels along here, maybe even tilt them for a little bit of better north orientation. I prefer to lie them flat to avoid the wind risk of lifting them off your roof. And we spend a truckload more, almost 3 times more on aluminium, and it's cheaper just to buy extra panels.
Okay.
So I'd rather lie the panels flat. So in essence, on our mock-up here, we'd want to hide away from the tree as far as possible, and we'd want to do a row here of panels like so. We can fit at least 8 there, and maybe another couple here away from
the tree.
Yeah. Okay, so there we have our mock-up, and we're now starting to create the concept in Cherie's mind. And now we're going to get to the part where we're going to look at our options. So on the options here, it's important in life to have 3 options. So in life, we're faced with what's called the decoy effect, and it happens to us all day long. We go into McDonald's, they have a small, medium, and large. They might have fancy words for it like SuperSize. We go to popcorn at the movies, it's small, medium, large. When you buy a phone, it's small, medium, and large. So and what they do really is they take the medium and large and they get pushed close together, and the small one is far away. And by doing that, we are decoyed. We inevitably buy the large one just by accident. We buy the large popcorn, and I bought an air conditioning system the other day, and I told my wife about the decoy effect. And then I pulled up the brochure and I was showing her the options and whatever, and I told her the one I want, and she said, "But you've been decoyed." And I didn't even see it happening to myself. So the decoy effect is really, really important in creating the concept of value. So what we're going to have a look at is our options. So this is our smaller option. I wouldn't use the word small to the client, but this is our small option. So we have a 5 kilowatt inverter, and it can take a maximum of 14 panels. So we can put 7 on this roof and 7 on that roof. And it's got 2 lanes. So in essence, we can use power here, and these 2 lanes will work independently of each other.
Okay.
So, and it can take up to 40 kilowatt hours of battery. So in this case, we can give you 14 panels, and we can give you 2 batteries to meet your energy needs. Okay, so that's our first option. So the caveat here is that during a power outage, it will be able to run your home and 1 high load appliance. So in essence, your home will be running, everyone will be happy, life is beautiful, everyone's watching television. But if it's Sunday night and you're watching your favorite movie, you're going to have to boil the kettle, then run the toaster, then run the popcorn machine, and then run the microwave in that order, and life is beautiful.
And that's only in summer?
No, that's all the time, because there's a load limit on the backup side of the inverter.
Okay.
So you have a load limit of running your house and 1 high load appliance without overloading. Sometimes it can be 2, but generally speaking, just as a rule of thumb, when I had a small inverter, I tried to train my family to use 1 high load appliance at a time. People walk into the kitchen and by natural default, they go toaster, kettle, microwave, and the house goes dark. So, but it's a fantastic option. It's really, really cost effective, and it will go a long way to achieving some of your goals.
Okay.
So our second option here is we have an 8 kilowatt inverter. It will allow us to run your house and 3 high load appliances at a time. And so if we just change that guy to 18 panels, you need 20. And we've got your 2 batteries here. And it has 3 lanes. So should you choose to upgrade your solar, you'll be able to, or your security, or you change your perimeter fence, or you become a solar fanatic, or you buy an electric car or something like that in future, and you want to add more panels, you will have this lane open to be able to use that.
Nice. Okay.
Okay. So that's our second option. And our third option is we have a 10 kilowatt inverter. The 10 kilowatt inverter basically will enable you to run, it's actually a 10.5, and it can even go up to 12 kilowatts for a minute. It will allow you to run everything concurrently. So you can turn on every high load appliance at the same time, and without worrying about it, it's just going to power your needs. And it has 4 lanes. So in your application, you don't necessarily need it, but in theory, if you needed another roof space like this on what looks like your mother-in-law's cottage or whatever the case may be, you could put up a small array here. So the 4th lane is not necessary at this point. We have 2 and 1 spare on the other one. So what you can see here is happening. So anyway, do you mind, you're going to have a go and you're going to think about it, and what kind of option are you thinking of?
Well, sorry, I'm just looking at the totals.
So we've got 172 for the small, 194 for the medium, and 196 for the large.
So 4,000 Rand difference between the medium and large, basically.
Well, 2, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is in the large, let's give it the 20 panels that you need.
Yeah.
But to all other things being equal, you can see the difference between the 2.
Okay, well, then I want the large.
The large.
Well, I'm going to call it the one that covers all my needs.
Okay. So the decoy effect is really, really fantastic. And what you'll notice here at this point is I'm a Fox fanatic. I haven't said the word Fox once yet. So this is nothing about the product that we're selling. So there's a very famous clip where Jordan Belfort passes someone this little box and he says, "Sell me a pen." And me as the salesperson, I love to pick up the pen and I go, "Oh, it's really beautiful. It's light, it's white, it's this, it's that. This pen actually can light my cigarettes as well," or whatever the 24 features are of. And that's typically how we engage our clients. So the approach that we're doing is I'm asking Cherie, well, what is it that you're looking for from a pen? And in essence, through this process, we've been engaging, finding out her needs. And then I'm going to go, well, actually, we have this pen that can light your cigarettes if that was her need. And so that's the strategy is different. So that's the decoy effect, but there's always going to be some objection. There's going to be some objection from the client. We're in a very competitive environment. And typically what the client's going to do in most cases is they're going to pick up. They're going to say, but yeah, that's wada. That's all beautiful and wonderful. But I've got a quote from Fricky down the road, who's my neighbor's cousin, and his price for the system that we need is 154, 174, 129. And then I'm going to ask the client, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to ask if he minds if I can have a look at it. And I'm going to have a look at it, and I'm going to pick 2 or 3 things down, 2 or 3 things on a competitive environment to show what the advantages of the system is over another. So typically the first thing that I would pick on is, I would say, well, the other guys often it just says panel and a price. It doesn't say the make or anything. But I'd ask the client is, what type of panel is it that he's been quoted on? So on the other quotation, what type of panel have you been quoted on?
I don't know, it's just panel.
Just a panel.
Didn't say, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd go through the benefits of, this is a typical solar panel. We have the part that we see, it's the glass on the front.
550 watt.
550 watt, thank you. And just allude to, every industry has a dark underside. So this is not me picking on any other panels, but this is me trying to win my deal. So I'm trying to say why our product has a differentiator over the other one, that the customer can trust us and engage with us. So I'd say every industry has a dark underside, and I'd pass the client the little piece of panel and I'd ask them, I don't want to bad talk the other guy, but if you just feel the front of the panel and feel the back of the panel, and so you get a feeling. And then I'd say, well, we provide you with these panels. And I'm not going to say anything to Cherie. I'm going to pass her, well, put that on the floor. Sorry, you're going to, there we go. I'm going to pass her this panel and ask her hands to feel the panel. So feel the front and feel the back, and what difference can you feel?
Well, this is solid glass.
And how does it feel in your hand compared to the other one?
Premium, heavy.
Heavy. And so,
Stronger.
so we all know, in essence, this is me telling to the client that, glass lasts long. I never worry about my car's windscreen being out in the sun, but I always worry about my car's dashboard. I've had cars in the past where the dashboard has cracked. So what we have is we have glass, it's inert, it has stood the test of time and been outside for, in some cases, for over 1,000 years, and in stained glass windows in churches around the world, and it's still working. And we have all experienced shower curtains. What happens to them after a period? They get hard and brittle. So in essence, the panels that we're offering you basically are like glass shower doors on both sides rather than shower curtains. And what this really means is they're just going to make much more power for longer. So I'd kind of do that. And as soon as I've done that, and I'd give you another example. So the guy would say, okay, well, they have a 5 kilowatt hour battery for 10 Rand, and we have a 5 kilowatt hour battery for 11 Rand or 12 Rand or 13 Rand or whatever the number happens to be. Then I would just ask the client, well, what type of battery is it? What's the depth of discharge on the other quote? So on your other quotation, what is your battery depth of discharge?
I have no idea what that means.
So each battery basically has a usable amount of power. So if you take a battery, and I'm just going to create another tab here just to give you an example. So if we have a 10 kilowatt hour battery, And typically batteries in the market lower voltage batteries can have an 80% depth of discharge. So if I go like this plus the pen and I go times by 0.8, you can see then there's 8 kilowatt hours usable in the battery
Okay, so the usable
power.
Yeah.
And the second part is that to move things around takes energy. So to move your car around takes energy, to move us around takes energy. And the same is with moving electricity around, you take energy to move it. And that in our terms is called round trip efficiency. So to get the power into the battery and get the power out of the battery, we have an energy loss.
Okay.
Like you move your car, it takes fuel to move it around. So in a 48-volt battery, some are different, some are better, some are worse. You typically have a 15% energy loss. So 7%, 7.5% getting the energy in, and 7.5% getting the energy out. So if we've got 8 kilowatt hours, and we've in essence got to times that by 0.85 to show us the usable amount of kilowatt hours in that battery. So if we have a look at the batteries that we're offering you, they are 90% depth of discharge, so 9 kilowatt hours is usable, and they have a 5% round trip efficiency. So in essence, they're going to times that by 0.95. So we're going to have 8.5 kilowatt hours of usable power as opposed to 6.8. And a quick sum is going to show us that if we do 1.75 divided by 6.8, that these batteries in essence are 25% more efficient than their counterparts. And the second part of that is by using less energy to move electricity around, they also run cooler. And by running cooler, they are going to have much better longevity.
Oh.
So what we're doing is typically the other solar, the person would say to me, but the other solar guy didn't tell me that. And what we're doing now is we're giving the client much more confidence that we're selling him something that's going to be far better for him than the other guy that's 25% more efficient. And so that goes a long way to making sure that, you know, pick on 2 or 3 points that are your key differentiators that you have over the market average and educate your client in a nice way like this of how it is. And we don't have to pick on a brand or anything. We're just picking on a technology. So you have phones with buttons, you have phones without buttons, you know, which one do you prefer, blah, 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 fish-based. So some guys will still say they want the phones with buttons, you know, then happy days, supply them, you know, because their mother has that or their grandmother has it or they've got 20 other systems like that, then wonderful, give them what they need. But the whole point here is we're trying to get the price that we want for our sale. We're not engaging with the client by reducing our price, trying to meet the competition. So if we're engaging with the client using a mock-up tool that everybody else is using, and we're using the product that everybody else is using, then the only recourse that we have is to decrease our price. So which is the road to zero that we've all found ourselves on. So I'm just going to just show you some of the mock-ups that we did. So what we did then is after I do the hand drawing thing with the client, so typically what I do is right away, when I got into the car, I would email the person a summary saying this is what we discussed, this is what your goals are, this is what you spend, this is what you're trying to do, 80% of your savings, have your pool, etc., educate your customer. And then for that, I'd normally show off the fancy phone app because I'd be doing this with my iPad in front of them or my phone. And I'd say, yes, you could be using your son can have a login and see it and so on and so forth. And I'd send them the draft little squiggle drawing that we had. And when I got back to the office, we'd do a mock-up. So this is, we were using a previous mock-up tool doing it. And then this one, we used IBC's mock-up tool, which is absolutely fantastic. So you can see the before and after, and here the before and after. And what was interesting for me when I look back at these in preparation for today is how similar the mock-up is to the final outcome of the installation. So it's not exact, but you can see here when the client looked at this image, in his mind, it has already happened. So what we're doing now is in the car when we're emailing the client is we are sending them these 3 options again. We're not forcing him, we're still allowing him to choose. But what we're including now is we're jumping onto the next thing. As as customers, we typically, what we're doing is when we're looking for something, we're jumping onto Google, and I'm going to, and we're looking for that the company is actually there. So then if you created a business on Google, Google used to post you something that meant you were physically there. It confirmed that you were existing. And we're looking for proof that you've done it before. So before you even get the call, or before you even get the call, we're just jumping onto Google and we're looking at the person's Google profile. So what we're coming to is the concept of edification. So there's self-edification. So that is where I stand up and I say, Mark's a fantastic guy. And there's customer edification or friends edification, where Casey came online at the beginning of the call and said, this is what Mark's done. And the two are taken in a completely different context. So what we'd have on our Google profile is we'd have both. We'd have self-edification. We take pictures of ourselves doing an installation. And then we have customer edification, the customer saying a video of something or other, saying how happy he was with blah, blah, blah fish paste. So, and all of this sounds like a lot and like I'm overwhelming you, but there is no easy way and there's no crack for success. So what we love to do is when I went and commissioned the site with the customer and he'd say, oh, I loved having your team here, or whatever it was that he said positively, I'd say, oh, thank you. Do you mind just saying that again for me? Pick up my phone and collect it. And by looking at it in hindsight, our entire business was built on the customers telling our next customers what a cool job we did. So I didn't rely on them finding it themselves. I would give it to them in their quote. So what you're seeing here are customer edification videos where the client said something happy about it. Obviously, I didn't film the guys who were grumpy that my guys had left black marks on the wall or floor or broken the, whatever the case may be. These are cases where the customer was happy, and immediately I then said, oh, do you mind just saying that again for me? And I'd pick that up, film a little bit of cutaways, and suddenly these would lead my options. So there's edification from a customer that your company does it. So that was really, really important. So I'd just cut and paste this, email the draft, then back at the office, when maybe we had a follow-up call and I sent the client the mock-up, I would often say, it looks like we can fit 14 panels or 16 panels, but do you mind if we send more panels and on the day, can we fit them? And we used to just ship a pallet to each site on installation, and 99 out of 100 times, if we could fit an extra 2 panels, the client would take them. And that was, all of this is upsizing the client, increasing our profitability, and also making the client happy, because in winter in Cape Town, Johannesburg is different. You guys have fantastic sun. In winter in Cape Town, you just can't have enough solar panels. So the mock-ups were really key to what we were doing. So then just going to skim through that. So, and in each one of these cases, so I went to this house and the client wanted a 5 kilowatt inverter, and he took a 40 kilowatt system. So it was just by using the Forever Now concept of doing the mock-up and getting it through that. And that led to the ability of us being able to grow our company and reinvest back in our company and invest in our customer support. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we will be sharing this with you. The one thing that I didn't speak to is which I forgot to refer to, is to explain the customer the difference between daytime solar power and nighttime solar power. So daytime solar power is obvious, it comes from the roof, and then nighttime solar power is obviously stored energy. And we calculated that you were going to do 30% of your power overnight, or 35% of your power draw overnight. So the customer has to play his part, and it's really important for us to educate him on that. And what I do is to thank you for your order, I would give you a CDI timer for your geyser. So it's 300-400 Rand for your 180,000 Rand order, and force the geyser to end the day. And if the client didn't have young children, we would ask the client if they would increase their geyser temperature to the maximum. And once their solar system throttled, at 11 o'clock, the geyser then becomes a second battery where we can store energy. So load shifting is really important. I was having a look at round trip efficiency, you know, because obviously I'm not trying to push Fox's round trip efficiency, rather pick on other systems. So I was really surprised. I went and found a few videos. This guy made a video on, he wanted to use his EcoFlow to save power during peak hours in the UK or wherever. And he just did a investigation of the energy loss, which is shown here in orange on the round trip efficiency side. So let me just, let's just do a recap of where we are. And there's many concepts here that are all woven into one, and many of them that you're all doing, and many that I did by accident and had no idea why they were working. Only now in hindsight, I've looked back and seen how they are working. So in essence, we're using the sell me a pen concept by asking you what you want from a pen. We're then saying, we have a problem, not you have a problem, and we're coming to your side of the table, quite literally. We're then demonstrating how we solve the problem ourselves and for other people, and that is selling the client a dream. And so in Cherie's mind, she said she's now seeing.
I don't remember what to say. But yeah, I've seen how you live, and I want to live that way too.
Okay. So there's a dream part, and then you know, you throw in the electric car and other things, and it all creates the future of what we're trying to do. So the mock-up is the forever now concept. We want to create that concept in the customer's mind. And when I was sitting around the dining room table, as soon as they asked me, well, where do you think we could put it? I knew the deal was done. You know, so for me, then I stop everything else. Now we're just jumping to the next part. I don't need to go any further. Then by using the decoy, it's not an evil thing. We're giving the client what they actually need. We're creating happier clients, but we're increasing our basket size. So our basket size, you'll see Woolworths and ShopRite and everyone are spending huge amounts of research and data trying to get you to spend just that little more in their store. And we need the same for our businesses, not only to survive, but to thrive. So now the customer is looking for proof. You need to demonstrate to the client that you've done it before. Even if it's your first 5 installations and it's for your mother and your cousin and your auntie down the road, just get them to say it for you on video and edify you and or your company. I look back, we made 5 or 10 videos back in the day. They carried all of our sales, you know. So just for your reference, there are a bunch of books that we have linked in this presentation that we'll share you after. So if you guys can please all just drop your email address into the text box for Casey so that she can send you the recording of this, the presentation, and the spreadsheet, and the links to these books. I started reading these books at the beginning of last year, and I was surprised. Brian Tracy is an absolute genius. Everything that I've been doing actually is just in his Psychology of Selling book, and I just didn't know it, you know. So if you're looking for more, the dining room concept, I never knew how important it was, but you know, discussing in the driveway or anywhere else just doesn't work when you're doing a full needs analysis. So what I just wanted to talk about is all of these things are referenced here. And so my ending note is we're spending a lot of time on the flavors of the month. The flavors of the month were Facebook and Instagram and now TikTok. And the way I refer to Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok is that they are like newspapers. It's today's news only, and then it's gone. And so there was this old saying when I grew up, the only thing a newspaper is good for is for wrapping your fish. So all of our marketing efforts, ourselves included, are falling into this trap. We are putting all our efforts into these platforms, but the news is very hard for customers to find on there. YouTube and Google is more like a library. It's a library that when you go and search for something, you're getting exposed to that person's library. And for me, the take home that we are starting to do is we're now shifting our effort away from Facebook and Instagram. Yes, we'll do what we call our fluff posts there. We don't really want anything for them. It's just, hello, we're here on the end of the wire and we're still alive. But the library, which is the meaningful stuff, the customer testimonials, case studies, whatever it is that you want to film, please make effort to work on your YouTube channel. And more importantly, the easier place to start out of all of this is just your Google for Business profile. It's where customers are finding you and they're clicking on a few images there. So do your photos show proof of what you guys have done, because you guys have been doing brilliant installations out there and solved the problem of load shedding for our wonderful government. And have you got your customers telling the world what a good job you guys have done? And just those two things changed our life. So I wanted to say a big thank you guys for taking the time to spend what has been an hour and a bit with myself. I'm not a guru on anything. This is just what has worked for me. If it works a little bit for you guys, I'm very, very grateful. We appreciate your support, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. Johan, do you have a question?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, thank you for once again for the training. Yeah, I just wanted to know that northeast, south, graph that you showed. Is that a website or something? We showed what you typically can get for a kilowatt installation, per kilowatt.
So any of the solar forecasting tools will tell you. So we were using, and I'll think of the name in a minute. It's a European or a German tool from back in the day. It was quite expensive, about €1,000 a year for the license for it. But any solar forecasting tool that you could put the tilt angle, orientation, and the location is going to give you that graph. And in our concept, it was, I mean, if I do the graph for Johannesburg, it's beautiful. It's flat. If anyone's in Johannesburg, they've got a much easier solar life than what we have. But really, the concept here from Cape Town was that everybody I showed it to doubled or tripled the amount of panels they bought.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so obviously the office uses the helioscope, but we don't all have access to that. So I was just wondering if that's a website that you use to show the graph.
I will find another one. What I've got really, and this is what I've found, is we migrated ourselves away from helioscope because, and I'm not bad talking it, it's a fantastic tool and it does the job really well. But every one of my competitors was using helioscope. So on the client's desk were 10 helioscopes. So the only difference then was the price between myself and the other 10, 11 guys, especially if it was a commercial project. So I migrated to an Australian piece of software that was completely different, and it incorporated batteries really well, and it incorporated solar finance really well. You could put the term and the interest in. And so if it got to that, mostly for homes, it didn't have to get that, but for small commercial installations, which was about 30% of our business, then I used Pylon from Australia. It was a really, really cool tool. It gave us a nice differentiator, and its mock-up by its nature was just clearer. It was less fuzzy. It did better at converting the Forever Now concept to our clients.
Thank you, Mark. Okay.
Thanks, Johan.
Does anyone else have any queries on anything Mark has covered today?
No, all good my side. Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate the training here today. Very insightful. A lot of your methods are being implemented at Crown Technologies, and we're finding it to be, I've been finding it to be quite successful in the short term that I've actually been with Crown. So thank you for that. It feels like confirmation that what I'm doing is heading in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, and thank you very much, Crown, for your guys' support. You guys rock.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Well, with that being said, we're going to wrap it up there. So what I just wanted to ask is, if you don't mind, just messaging or emailing Casey your Gmail address. so that we can share this recording with you, just so if you want to refer back to it, and also your email address for us to share the slide, spreadsheet, and I think that's basically it, and the video. Yeah.
Fantastic. Mark,
Big thank
thank
you.
you for today. We really appreciate it from everyone here. And you did an amazing job.
You're too kind, Casey.
Yeah. Severine, I see you raised your hand.
Me.
Hi, I was just sending a thumbs up. I didn't realize I was putting my hand up. Thank you so much, Mark.
No.
Amazing.
Thank you.
How are
Thank you,
you?
Severine.
Good, thanks. Thanks for the training.
Thank you.